Dead Woman Walking by the Indian author Meena Kandasamy. So you would have already, many of you would be familiar with Meena Kandasamy. She is a very famous poet. She has a lot of social media presence, and maybe you have read some of her poems already. But she is a Dalit Bahujan woman or feminist writer. She is a poet. She writes novels. She's a translator and an anti-caste activist, a feminist and anti-caste activist. She was born in Chennai, Tamil Nadu in 1984. Her parents are from lower caste backgrounds, and you can read up more about her, about her life and her background later. I have put up this link to her website in your Google Classroom, and all those things. And she has published 2 collections of poems, Touch and Miss Militancy. She also has 3 novels, The Gypsy Goddess, When I Hit You, Exquisite Cadavers, and she has written a lot of essays. She has translated a lot of Tamil works, and she has been very active in many anti-caste movements and other feminist movements, etc. So we will now move on to the poem Dead Woman Walking, which is part of this her second collection of poetry called Miss Militancy. I have also put up a PDF of the entire book, Miss Militancy, so that you can take a look at it to get a sense of what else she has what are the other poems in that collection. Like, most of these poems are actually, so this is the Miss Militancy, that you can see the contents of her. These are her different poems, and Dead Woman Walking is the one that we are studying. And most of these poems in Miss Militancy are they are feminist poems, and they are reworking Hindu mythology. And even a lot of it is a reworking of Tamil legends and Tamil mythology as well. So the poem that we are studying, Dead Woman Walking, is also an instance of such a reworking. We will talk about that in a moment. And the title of this collection, Miss Militancy, the title poem, there is also a poem in the collection called Miss Militancy, which is a reworking of the story of Kannagi from Chilappadigaram. So you would be familiar with that story, the story of Kannagi, who was wronged by a king who thought that her husband had stolen the queen's anklets. So that is a story that you would be familiar with. So such stories from Tamil legends or Tamil literature have also been reworked by Kandasamy. So I will start by reading to a couple of paragraphs from the preface to her collection, Miss Militancy, and then we will move on to Dead Woman Walking. So the preface is called, Should You Take Offense? So it is a kind of, she's saying that I have reworked a lot of the familiar mythologies, the familiar myths, the stories that may be part of your religion, part of what you grew up listening to as part of your culture, and I have reworked them in ways that might cause offense for you. You might find them offensive. So, for example, she has a completely different way in which she presents Sita in one of her poems. You can read them later. But rather than as the epitome of loyalty, she is showing Sita in a completely different way, which might be very offensive for people who consider Ram and Sita to be gods and to be a god and goddess. So she's saying you might take offense at some of the things that I'm writing, but suppose you are the kind of person who will take offense, you should read this preface. And then she has a very short preface where she is talking about the problems in Indian mythology. And these are the important, some of the important parts that are relevant to our poem. She says, your myths put me in my place. Therefore, I take perverse pleasure in such deliberate paraphrase. So because I am a lower caste woman, because I am a woman and also lower caste, your myths, the Hindu myths, are normally those that privilege upper caste people, and that to men. So women are always given a kind of lower position in these myths. Also lower caste people are given, Dalits and Bahujans are given very low position in these myths. They are shown as Rakshasas or as some kind of sluts, or different kind of negative portrayals can be seen of such lower caste characters. So your myths, the myths that you believe in, put me in my place. It is as if they're saying that you have no place in these myths because you are a woman, because you are a lower caste person. Your place is somewhere else, and we will put you in your place. Because of that, therefore, I take perverse pleasure in such deliberate paraphrase. I am paraphrasing the myths. Paraphrase basically means something like a summary in one's own words. But here, when she says paraphrase, she is deliberately changing the myth slightly. So she is presenting each myth from a different perspective. She is reworking these myths. She's saying, why do I do that? Why do you think that I am doing it just to offend you? No, that is not the case. Your myths as they exist now are offensive for me, for my community. They are offensive for women, they are offensive for Dalits, they are offensive for Bahujans, they are offensive for so-called Shudras. So let me create a new mythology, or let me rework your mythology in such a way that it foregrounds or highlights the position of women and Dalits, especially Dalit women. And if you find that offensive, then you should just understand why I am doing that. And then she says, I am no atheist. I allow everyone in existence. It is just that I struggle with any story that has stayed the same way for far too long. So, my Mahabharata moves to Las Vegas. My Ramayana is retold in 3 different ways. I am unconventional, but when I choose to, I can carry tradition. That is why I am Meera, Andal, and Akka Mahadevi all at once, spreading myself out like a feast, inviting the gods to enter my womb. I am also Karekal Ammayar, suspected of infidelity for being ravishingly beautiful. Like each of these women, I have to write poetry to be heard. I have to turn insane to stay alive. Telling my story another way lets me forgive you. Twisting your story to the scariest extent allows me the liberty of trying to trust you. I work to not only get back at you, I actually fight to get back to myself. I do not write into patriarchy. And now these are the most famous lines from her preface. My Mariamma bays for blood. My Kali kills. My Draupadi strips. My Sita climbs onto a stranger's lap. All my women militate. They brave bombs. They belittle kings. They take on the sun. They take after me. So this is the general idea behind her collection. So I'm not going to go into any greater detail. You can read more. You can read the entire preface later. You can read more poems from this collection later. But this is the general idea that she is writing in a very unapologetic manner, highlighting the kind of figures from Hindu mythology and from Tamil mythology and legend who have been generally considered either not given a good enough representation or completely excluded from representation. And she is trying to present the story from their perspective. She is showing all these women as being militant, which means as being rebellious. So all these women are shown as rebelling against tradition, rebelling against patriarchy, rebelling against the oppressive caste structure. So the particular poem that we are dealing with, Dead Woman Walking, is also based on one such legend from Tamil literature, who is a saint, a Tamil saint known as Karekal Ammayar. Karekal Ammayar എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു Tamil saint ആണ്. Everybody understands Malayalam, right? Is there anybody in this class who doesn't understand Malayalam? No, right? If there's somebody who doesn't understand Malayalam, just write in the comment box, okay? Because I have a tendency to sometimes explain in Malayalam. I'll try to avoid that, but okay. So, yeah, this poem is based on the story of a woman saint from Tamil literature called Karaikal Ammayar. Now, the story of Karaikal Ammayar is that she was a great devotee of Shiva. She was a great devotee of Shiva, and her devotion was so powerful that people used to come to her. Other devotees of Shiva used to come to her for her blessings. And her name was Punitavati. Punitavati, and she grew up as the daughter of a merchant. And later she was married to a man named Paramadattan. Paramadattan. And what happened was that, so she initially had a happy marriage and all, and she was also extremely beautiful. So one day, what happened is that her husband was not in the house. He sent her 2 mangoes that would be kept, that had to be kept for him to eat. So she kept the mangoes in the kitchen and she was cooking and doing other things. When suddenly a sadhu came, a sannyasi, a Shiva sannyasi came to meet her. So this is a person who is not just a devotee of Shiva, but he is a kind of saint. And the idea is that if you are a worshipper of Shiva, you have to also look after such people. So Karaikalamir or Punitavati was in the kitchen when she had a guest, a sudden surprise guest who was a Shiva sannyasi, and that man came and asked for food, but she had not finished cooking lunch. Therefore, what she did was she gave him some curd rice. That was all that she had. And there were these 2 mangoes that her husband had sent her. So she shared 1 mango with this man. She kept 1 for her husband and she gave 1 mango to this Shiva sannyasi. And that man had it. He was happy and he left. And there is one version of the story which says that actually it was Shiva himself who came in the guise of a sannyasi, and he was trying to test her, and he was very happy when she gave him this mango. So anyway, later her husband came for lunch and she gave him food and all, and she gave him the remaining mango. But then the husband asked, what about the other mango? I had sent you 2 mangoes. Why do you only give me 1? Give me the second one as well. And she was a little worried. What will she do? And she prayed to Shiva and she asked, what will I do? And immediately a ripe mango appeared in her hand. So this was a blessing that Shiva gave to her. And she gave the second mango to her husband, and it was so tasty, it was so delicious that he was worried, where did she get this? And he was very suspicious of her. How did you get this mango? This is not the mango that I sent you. This is much more delicious. Where did you get it? So he was probably suspicious that some other man had given her this mango and that maybe she was having an affair with some other man. So she was very upset, and initially she didn't want to tell him because he was not a religious man. So she did not want to tell him that I got this mango from Shiva. But he got very angry, and finally she told him, I prayed to God and he gave me this mango. This is what happened. A Shiva sannyasi had come. I gave him the first mango. Now when you ask for the second one, I prayed to God and he gave me another mango. And because it is a divine mango, maybe that is why it is so tasty. But her husband did not believe her, and what he did was he got very angry and he said, oh, if that is the case, then you pray again and ask God to give you 1 more mango. So again she prayed, and again Shiva gave her another mango. Seeing this, so this time her husband was able to see right in front of him this miracle happening, and he was so scared, and he realized that he had completely misunderstood his wife. And then he fell at her feet and he started seeing her like a goddess. He started calling her mother. He said, now I realized that I was very unjust to you. I was very unjust to you. I misunderstood you. I should not have done that. Please forgive me. And then he said, now I can no longer see you as my wife, because you are such a devout woman, because you are such a blessed woman. I can only see you as a goddess or as a mother. I will not be able to see you as a wife. Again, I cannot have any kind of marital relations with you. And then he just left her. So this is a weird thing that happened, that even though he believed her, even though she was able to prove her loyalty to him and prove that actually it was her devotion to Shiva that resulted in her getting this delicious fruit, still he left her because suddenly she was just too she was at a he put her on a pedestal. He could not see her as a woman. He could not see her as his wife anymore. Then he left that country. He went somewhere else, and he got married to another woman. He had children and all that. And Punitavati was unable to. So she was left all alone, and then she became a sannyasi herself. She prayed to Shiva and she asked him to change her form. She said, all these problems happened because I was actually beautiful. That is why my husband thought that I would be unfaithful to him. So please make me ugly. So she prayed to Shiva to make her ugly, and Shiva made her look a bit like the goddess Kali. So she had matted hair, jada pidicha mudi, and she had bulging eyes, and she looked very scary. And and then she started again. She continued becoming she continued as a devotee of Shiva. She composed a lot of songs in praise of Shiva. Other devotees used to come and meet her and all that, to take blessings from her. And then finally she told Shiva, I want to come to you. I want to come to Mount Kailasa, which is where Shiva stays. I want to come to you. So Shiva said, you can come, but don't you can come to me. And then one version says that Shiva himself asked her to walk to Kailasa, not on her feet but on her hands, like talagutti ninnattu. Another version of the story says that Karaikal Ammayar herself decided. She's called Karaikal Ammayar because she's from this town called Karaikal. Okay, so Karaikal Ammayar herself decided that her feet are too polluted. She cannot walk to Kailasa on her feet. Therefore, she decided to walk on her hands. These are two different versions of the story. But ultimately, the story is that Karaikal Ammayar finally became one with Shiva. She was able to go to her god Shiva. So this is a story, and in the story we know that it is in one sense it is a very sad story, because even though this woman was completely loyal to her husband and so devout to Shiva, she was first of all misunderstood by her husband, and later she had to even after she proved her loyalty, she was abandoned by her husband because she was too devout. Adim, initially he thought that she was disloyal to him, and he was ready to punish her or leave her for that. Later, even when he realized that she was loyal, he realized she was too devout for him, and then he finally left her. However, Meena Kandasamy offers us in the actual legend, Karaikal Ammayar takes all this very passively. She accepts her fate, and she is happy because she is one with Shiva. She is able to become one with Shiva. But Meena Kandasamy reworks the story a little bit as a more rebellious poem. So now we will read the actual poem. So far, are you with me? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I hope ഞാൻ പറയുന്നതൊക്കെ clear ആണല്ലോ അല്ലേ?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So what we'll do now, and I hope you can see the presentation now. I'm presenting the poem, Dead Woman Walking. We will move on to thank you. We'll move on to the poem. So first we will read the poem quickly, and then we will try to analyze it. So keep the story of Karaikal Ammayar in mind. Dead woman walking. I am a dead woman walking asylum corridors with faltering step, with felted flying hair, with hollowed cheeks that offset bulging eyes, with welts on my wrists, with creasing skin, with seizures of speech and song, with a single story between my sobbing pendulous breasts. Once I was a wife, beautiful, married to a merchant, shifty-eyed, living the life until he was lost in listless doubt of how what I gave him was more delicious than whatever had been given to me. His mathematics could never explain the magic of my multiplying love. This miracle, like materializing mangoes out of thin air, like dishing out what was never there. This discrepancy drove him away. A new job in another city. He hitched himself to a fresh and formless wife. Of course, as all women do, I found out. I wept in vain. I wailed. I walked on my head. I went to God. I sang in praise of dancing dervishes. I made music for this world to devour on some dejected day. I shed my beauty. I sacrificed my six senses. Some call me mad, some call me mother, but all of them led me here to this land of the living dead. So, this is the poem. Now, we will go stanza by stanza. The poem is titled Dead Woman Walking. I am a dead woman walking asylum corridors. So, first of all, how can a dead woman walk, right? So, there is something very, there is a duality about this character. She is, on the one hand, she is dead, which means that she is outside the world. If you are part of the world, you are alive, but she is dead. She is somehow not part of the world and she is considered to be dead. I am a dead woman walking because she is a Shudra woman. Now, here, what we also have to keep in mind is that this is not a direct interpretation of Karekalamayar's story. Rather, she is talking about the condition, about the situation of a woman, probably a lower caste Mayar. She's using that myth in order to highlight the condition of this woman. So I am a dead woman walking asylum corridors. So I am walking through asylum corridors. Asylum usually here might refer to mental asylums. So people think that I am mad. I'm considered to be dead. I'm considered to be mad. I am not part of society. Society does not accept me as a functioning part of it. Actually, I'm considered to be a mad woman. And I'm walking through asylum corridors. And this is how she describes herself. With faltering step, my steps falter. I cannot walk in a very smooth and graceful manner. My steps falter. I have felted flying hair. Felted hair means matted hair. Jada bidicha mudi. My hair is flying. It is not kept in a very, it is not tied neatly as society wants women to be. Society wants women to dress in a particular way, to tie their hair very neatly so that there is nothing of excess in you. But I am not like that. I don't walk gracefully as society wants women to walk. I walk with faltering steps. My hair is not tied neatly. Instead, it is felted. It is not even combed very nicely. It is felted and my hair is flying in the air with hollowed cheeks that offset bulging eyes. So this is like the image of Kare Kalamayar after she became a Kali kind of figure. So my eyes are bulging, my cheeks are hollowed. I do not fit the stereotypical notions of beauty. With welts on my wrists, welts are scars. So it is as if somebody has either tied her up and now she has broken the bonds that held her. That could leave welts. Or it could be that she has tried to hurt herself. She has tried to cut her own wrist. We don't know what it is. There are bruises on her wrist. There are welts on her wrist. With creasing skin. My skin is not smooth as a beautiful woman's skin is supposed to be, but it is creased. It is full of wrinkles like an old woman's skin is supposed to be. With seizures of speech and song, whether I'm speaking or I'm singing, I cannot speak in a very fluent manner. I cannot sing in a very flowing manner. Both my speech and my song have seizures. And the word seizures is usually used to refer to epileptic fits. So when you are an epileptic fits were traditionally supposed to come to people when you are possessed by either a god or a demon. So when I speak in fits and starts. When I sing in seizures. I do not either speak or sing or walk in a very flowing, graceful manner as society expects a good woman to behave. Rather, I behave as if I am possessed. And from this description, it is unclear whether she is possessed by a goddess or by a demon. And the very goddess Kali, the very image of goddess Kali, which is supposed to be what Karekalamayar ended up as looking like, the very image of goddess Kali is actually very paradoxical because she is a goddess, but she looks like a demon. So whether and she behaves like a demon, she drinks blood, etc. So she's a very, she doesn't fit into any stereotypical notions of how a good woman is supposed to behave. So just like that, Kandasamy's character, the poetic persona in this poem says that I am not like the women that society accepts. Instead, I am like a dead woman walking, I am like a mad woman walking through asylum corridors. I am partly like a demon and partly like a goddess. I am like somebody who's been possessed by some supernatural spirit that is beyond the bounds of society. With seizures of speech and song, with a single story between my sobbing pendulous breasts. So I am sobbing, I am crying. And when you sob, your heart, your chest will move. So my breasts are moving, they are pendulous. Pendulous again, pendulous breasts. Pendulous means hanging. So pendulous breasts are again not it's not supposed to be something that beautiful women have. Old women have swinging breasts. So my pendulous breasts are sobbing, and between my breasts, that is in my heart, actually, what I have is a single story. And what is a single story? It is the story that is common to all women who have been marginalized by society. All women who have been, who are considered to be outside the bounds of acceptable social conduct, have a single story of being betrayed, of being abandoned, of being marginalized. And that is a story that I too carry within my heart. So I hope this stanza is clear. I am a dead woman walking asylum corridors, with faltering step, with felted flying hair, with hollowed cheeks that offset bulging eyes, with welts on my wrists, with creasing skin, with seizures of speech and song, with a single story between my sobbing pendulous breasts. That was the introduction to the poem. Now we move on to what happened to her, and this is where she talks about the past of this character using the story of Karekalamayar. Once I was a wife, beautiful, married to a merchant, shifty-eyed. So once I was a wife and I was beautiful. I was married to a merchant who was shifty-eyed. And shifty-eyed is an adjective that she uses to describe the husband, the merchant. He was shifty-eyed in the sense that, shifty-eyed is what you say when somebody's eyes keep shifting, when somebody does not hold your gaze. And those are people who are not quite direct and honest in their dealings with you. When you say that somebody is shifty-eyed, you're saying that person is dishonest. So a merchant, maybe he's a dishonest merchant, maybe that's how he's made his money. Maybe it also just means that there is no trust between the husband and the wife. So I was a beautiful wife and I was married to a shifty-eyed merchant, living the life until he was lost in listless doubt. So until he started doubting me, we were living the life. Living the life means, she's also using a little bit of informal language in her poems. Living the life means this is the life that we're living, like living a good life, living a happy life. So we were very happy with each other until one day he started becoming doubtful of me. He started doubting me until he was lost in listless doubt. You can also see the alliteration in lost and listless. Lost in listless doubt of how, what was the doubt? Of how what I gave him was more delicious than whatever had been given to me. I gave him something which was much more delicious than whatever he had given me. Now, what does this mean? On the one hand, it is just the story of the mangoes, right? The story that we already mentioned, the story of Karekalamayar. It tells that the husband gave her certain mangoes, but later the mangoes that she gave him turned out to be more delicious, and that made him suspicious. But it could also mean that she gave him so much more love, and affection and care than he ever gave to her. So whatever this wife gave the husband was so much more delicious, was so much better, was so much more than what he gave her. So her love for him was excessive. It was his love for her was maybe much more restrained. Her love and her passion was much more excessive, and that made him doubtful. That made him suspicious. His mathematics could never explain the magic of my multiplying love. This miracle, like materializing mangoes out of thin air, like dishing out what was never there. So, just like the story of Karaikal Ammayar, where mangoes were materialized out of thin air, there was no mango, but out of thin air, the mangoes materialized. The mango came into being because of her devotion. Just like that, I am also dishing out what was never there. I am giving him what was never there because I am also able to create love from nothing. Even if he gives me no love, I am able to still love him. So, this is the story of a wife who is in a loveless marriage. She is very passionate, she is full of love and care for her husband, but the husband does not love her back. And normally, we say that anything, if we should love somebody, then we should also get some love in return. But she was not like that. She loved him unconditionally, and she was able to create love out of nothing. It is not like he gave her love and she returned that love. He gave her nothing, but still she was able to give him love and care. So his mathematics, because he was a merchant, mathematics was his forte. And according to the laws of mathematics, according to the laws of physics, according to the laws of science, you cannot create something from nothing. You can only, matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. That is one of the scientific principles of the world. So he was a merchant. He dealt in mathematics, in accounts, etc. And he was unable to understand where she was able to come up with more and more love, even when there was nothing given to her. So her multiplying love was a miracle. She was dishing out what was never there, just like Karaikal Ammayar was giving the mango which was not there to her husband. Once I was a wife, beautiful, married to a merchant, shifty-eyed, living the life until he was lost in listless doubt of how what I gave him was more delicious than whatever had been given to me. His mathematics could never explain the magic of my multiplying love. This miracle, like materializing mangoes out of thin air, like dishing out what was never there. In those 4 lines, you can also look at a couple of things. One is the use of mathematics and multiplying love. Multiplication is something that we usually associate with mathematics, but the multiplication of love is not something that mathematics can explain. Similarly, there is a lot of alliteration here. Mathematics, magic, multiplying, miracle, materializing, mangoes, right? All those also add to the beauty of the poem. Okay, now we continue. So this discrepancy drove him away. A new job in another city. He hitched himself to a fresh and formless wife. Of course, as all women do, I found out. I wept in vain, I wailed, I walked on my head, I went to God. So again, this discrepancy, what is a discrepancy? The mathematical discrepancy, the arithmetic discrepancy between what he gave her and what she gave him back, that drove him away. So it was not because she didn't love him. It was not because she fell in love with somebody else. It was not because of any fault of hers that he ran away from her, that he abandoned her, but because she loved him too much. She loved him much more than he loved her. And just like Karaikal Ammayar's husband, this discrepancy drove him away. A new job in another city. He went to another city, he got a new job, he abandoned her. He hitched himself to a fresh and formless wife. He hitched himself to means he bound himself to, he married a fresh and formless wife. He married a new wife, another woman who was fresh and formless. What does this mean? Again, there is alliteration, fresh and formless. What does this mean? say that his new wife was fresh and formless, because this woman, the poetic persona, already had a form, already had an excess of form. That form here means that she had a personality. She loved him too much. Her love was excessive. Her passion was excessive. Her personality was excessive. But this man was scared of such a strong woman. Instead, he found a wife. He found another woman who was formless, who didn't have a strong personality, so that he could mold her personality to what suited him. If she is formless, he can form her, he can reform her. Whereas he realized that his present wife was not reformable. He could not reform her, he could not change her into a shape that suited him. So he went away to another city, got a new job, hitched himself to a fresh and formless wife. So he abandoned her and went and found another woman. Of course, as all women do, I found out. So I found out that he left me and went and found another woman. He started having another more comfortable life in a different place. And I found out, as all women tend to do. And when you say this, I found out, you get the sense that the separation was also not a consensual one. It is not like he talked to her and said, listen, let us separate, let us divorce. But we get the impression that he abandoned her, went away, and later she found out from somebody else that he is married to another woman. Of course, as all women do, I found out. I wept in vain. I wept, but it was in vain. There was no point in weeping. I knew that by weeping, it could not change anything. But because I loved him so much, because I was so emotional, I wept in vain. I wailed. Again, wailing is not something that women are supposed to do. Wailing means to shout and cry in a very loud noise, loud voice, making a lot of loud noises. This is not something women are supposed to do. If they weep, they are supposed to weep very silently, in such a way that they don't disturb other people. But she wailed loudly. I walked on my head, I went to God. Here now she is drawing on the exact story of Karaikal Ammayar, who, after being abandoned by her husband, decided to embrace God, to go to God, and therefore she walked on her head. Similarly, this woman also, the poetic persona, also wept in vain. She wept even though people told her, don't weep, it is in vain, but she did not. It is not that she was too emotional or she couldn't control her emotion. That doesn't mean she was weak. It just means that she didn't care about propriety. She didn't care about what was considered to be the right way of behavior or not. This relationship was something that she had invested a lot of her time and energy and passion in. And when it broke down, she was completely, she did not care about expressing her emotions. She expressed her emotions so loudly in such a flamboyant manner, which is not accepted by society. So instead of just trying to be content with whatever life gave her, she wept and wailed, and she rebelled against the situation, and she made her emotions clear to everybody. I wept in vain, I wailed, I walked on my head, I went to God. The word sound is again repeated here. I sang in praise of dancing dervishes. I made music for this world to devour on some dejected day. But that doesn't mean that she just stopped there. She did not stop by weeping and wailing. Instead, she started singing, she made music. And Karaikal Ammayar at that time was making poems in praise of Shiva. But this character, the poetic persona, instead she started singing and making music, which means basically if you connect this to the poet herself, she started writing poetry. She expressed herself through literature. So I sang in praise of dancing dervishes. Dancing dervishes are again supposed to be, a dervish is supposed to be a kind of a Sufi saint who dances to music as if he is possessed, he or she is possessed, and that dance is supposed to be an expression of their love for God. So I sang in praise of dancing dervishes. I also became almost like a dancing dervish. I was possessed by love. I was possessed by my realization that my own love is important. So suddenly at this moment, the man becomes unimportant. She loved him. He did not deserve her love, but her love as an excess still remains, and she is only able to express this love through literature. Okay. Uh, so I sang in praise of dancing dervishes. I made music, I made poetry, I made literature for this world to devour on some dejected day. I turned my own dejection, my own pain, my own love, my own story, I turned it into poetry, I turned it into music that the world could enjoy, that the world could appreciate when they were also dejected. I realized that there are many other people, many other women who are affected just like me. And I wanted to write to express what they also could not express so that they can read my poetry, they can enjoy my music on a day that they are also feeling dejected, they are also feeling depressed. I shed my beauty, I sacrificed my six senses. I shed, so this is again drawing on the story of Kare Kalamayar, but it is also to say that I stopped being beautiful as the world expected me to. The world wanted me to be beautiful in a very particular way. I stopped being that because I did not want to be something for the pleasure of others, for the pleasure of men or for the pleasure of the world. Rather, went deeper and deeper into myself. I was more interested in expressing myself than in being beautiful for others. Some called me mad, some called me mother, but all of them led me here to this land of the living dead. So some said, I am mad, and they tried to dismiss me. Some called me mother, which is also a different way of dismissing me. Just like Karekal Ammayar's husband called her mother and then said, I cannot see you as a wife anymore. Both these are ways of dismissing her, of rejecting her, of marginalizing her. But all these ways, people looked at me in different ways. I stopped caring about them, and all this ultimately led me to this place, this asylum corridor, this land of the living dead. So it could be, if in one sense you can say that she is talking about a moment of depression in her life where she probably had to be incarcerated in an asylum. I'm not talking about the poet herself, I'm saying the poetic persona is in such a situation where she feels that she is incarcerated in an asylum, nobody understands her. But in a different sense, the world itself has become like an asylum. And here we can look at the two different meanings of the word asylum. One, normally it refers to mental asylum, a mental hospital where people who do not fit into society are kept, and they are tried to be and they are cured, or people try to cure them. There is an attempt to cure them and make them fit better into society. That is one meaning of the word asylum. But another meaning of the word asylum means a place of refuge. Asylum can refer to a place where you are safe, a place of refuge. So she has now reached a place where she is no longer afraid. She is no longer worried about what the world will think about her, about what her husband, or about what society will think about her. She has now come back to, or she has found a place where she is happy. That maybe other people think that she looks like Kali, she looks like an old woman, she looks like a mad woman, but she doesn't care because she is actually expressing herself, and that is the only thing that is important to her. So there is a movement from a moment when the woman had put all her energy, all her passion into love for her husband, who did not love her back in that way, in the same way, and who did not deserve her love because he abandoned her after realizing how deeply, how passionately she loved him. That was her past. From that, she has moved on to a future, to a moment where instead of being part of that society, she has left all the values, all the fake values of society behind, and she is now in a position where people might consider her mad, but still she is very happy. She is very satisfied because she is able to express herself, her real self, through her poetry, through her music, through her songs, through literature. So that is the general idea behind this poem. I'll stop recording now.